NUXT Core チームリードダニエル・ロー様によるセッション、フレームワークを超えて次の10年の Web を築くをお届けします。ビューフェスジャパン2025では4つのトラックを同時進行しています。この FitFits with 箱物トラックについては、画面右下の方にありますハッシュタグビューフェス箱物でどんどん感想を共有してください。ダニエル、are you ready?
I hope so.
それではダニエル様、よろしくお願いします。
Thank you very much for that warm introduction. It is a real pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. It's my second trip to Tokyo, and I want to say how much I appreciate arranging the weather so that I would feel comfortable coming from Edinburgh in Scotland. The gentle rain is exactly what I thrive in. My name is Daniel Rowe. I am a full-time open source maintainer. I lead the core team building Nuxt. I'm also on the team building Nitro, and there are a few other projects I'm involved in too, from Fontaine to Magic Regexp to Elk, and a few other things too. You can check those out. I'm a GDE, an MVP, and a GitHub star, and I recently started as a software engineer at Vercel. And this is where I live. Not exactly. It's a photo that I've taken from a library online, but it's a very atmospheric city. And if you ever do visit, drop me a line. I would love to catch up or take you out for a coffee. My website is there. It's rowe.dev. Feel free to check it out, mostly because you'll find out how to message me, which you can do through any social network there, except for Twitter. I don't have a Twitter account anymore. And you have discovered that if you go to rowe.dev/live or scan that QR code, you can send any emoji that you would like at any point in this talk. And already I'm beginning to wonder if that was a good idea. I trust you. You can send positive and negative emojis. When I was building this feature, I made the mistake of posting about it on Blue Sky, and someone rickrolled me. They discovered that I didn't have appropriate validation for my emoji endpoint, and you could send multiple emojis at the same time. And so apparently it's possible to write the whole lyrics to Never Gonna Give You Up in emojis. I didn't know. If you haven't heard of Nuxt, Nuxt is a framework for building sites with Vue. And the concept is that it should be easy to get started. It should have very low effort, zero friction, but that it should be fully customizable. So as your needs change and as you grow, you should be able to do anything with it. In fact, if there is ever a situation where you can't do something with Nuxt that you can do with Vue, I want you to bug me about it, because it should be, the vision is, it should be with you every step of the way. It has some downloads and some stars, and generally speaking, they're going in the right direction. That massive dip was, I think, an NPM outage, or possibly Christmas. I'm not sure which one. But I'm not actually here to talk primarily about Nuxt. I'm here to talk about going beyond frameworks and building for the next generation of the web. And I actually am a little bit doubtful of whoever came up with that talk title. It was me, but I'm not sure what I was thinking. But here's the question. I'll try to answer it. How can you build best? If we're looking at thinking about not just this year, but in 10 years' time, what kinds of things can we do and know that will help us build well? And obviously, the first and most important thing actually is not to use Nuxt, of course. It is that you, each one of us here, is irreplaceable. And in an era of excitement about AI, it's easy to feel like we are cogs who could be replaced by something else at any moment in time. And I think that is very important for us to remember that that's not true. Implementation is never the difficult thing. Writing code is not the key aspect of our job. We are, in fact, artisans of the web. We are people who craft things. The tools that we use change. And if any one of us defines ourselves by our tool, then I think we've missed the point. And I say that very confidently at a Vue Fest, but actually Vue is not the most important thing for any one of us, I think. I would hope not. It is a tool that we use to build beautiful and performant websites, but actually the most important thing is the artisan or the craftsperson, the one who creates the website. I hope you're with me on this, because it's easy to forget that this is the thing. It is the directing mind, the direction, the choice, the sense of what is good, the decision of what is complete and final, and a lot of things will change along the way. And I want to say this is very important for me to tell myself on a daily basis, and I think probably for all of us too, because there is something that is fighting us at every moment in time, and that is the fear of missing out. If you subscribe to any social media network, whether that be Twitter or Blue Sky or anything else, there's a constant stream of new libraries and exciting new frameworks and developments in the world of web development. And I am there for it. I'm so there for it. I love seeing new things. But it does, over time, create this perception that we are becoming out of date. Do you ever feel that? That there are so many new things coming out that maybe you don't know very much. You only possess a tiny fraction of the information that you want to have. But, and that, of course, is true. We do only know a tiny portion of the information that's out there. And I hope, like me, you love to explore new things. But that's our job, I suppose. But it's not what defines us. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if we're using a cool new framework, like Nuxt. It matters that you're building something that does the job you have it to do. And I would far rather see people excited about what you're building and what you can share with other people, rather than get excited about the framework that you use to do it. I have a question. What frustrates you about web development? And you can answer in the box on my website if you want. I think there are a lot of things that frustrate us. Feel free to, of course, reply in Japanese. I won't be able to read it, but okay, let's see what Foka thought. Now, the reason I'm asking this question is because if the first and most important thing to think about when looking to build something that lasts for the next decade of the web is to remember that the most important piece of the puzzle in building is me, each one of us, who is doing the building. Like, we are the ones crafting. The second thing is to think about some of the things that actually stand in our way. So I'll move on. And there are a lot of answers here. Time, maybe slowness, complexity, changes, Safari. Good to see that. Browsers, complexity, frameworks themselves, CSS. Someone else says Tailwind CSS, so you have a choice which one frustrates you more. Testing. I am going to study this in great detail. And I'm sorry for the person who said that frameworks frustrated you about web development. I think the second thing to know, to remember, and to choose when looking to build for the next decade of the web is actually to embrace a framework. And I'll tell you why. This is something that's often said. So if you were to read the React documentation, for example, you'll see that you should use React with a framework. You'll see that you should use React Native with a framework. And I think that's actually not a bad call to recommend. I think a framework is inevitable. Whether that's because you're using something that is pre-built, or because you end up replicating it yourself. So the original frameworks like Next.js, Ember, Angular, Meteor, Nuxt, and many more, by the way, that I've left out, all existed to solve problems that people were facing over and over again. I don't know how many people here have ever authored a Webpack configuration. Okay, if you look around and see the hands going up, they are the ones we honor. They fought in the trenches of web development. Because it used to be that configuring your bundler was something that scarred you for life. And if you knew someone who had configured it correctly, you would take them out to a nice dinner. You would ask them to share that Webpack configuration with you. You might even create a framework to mean that you didn't have to configure Webpack. And that was what a lot of early frameworks did. They gave you a configuration. They did other things, like they configured SSR, server-side rendering. They might do things like page splitting, and more. But the fact is that if you don't have a framework to do those things, you'll still end up doing them. Whatever you codify as best practice yourself, and which you end up replicating in project after project after project, is your framework. So the question isn't so much, should you choose a framework? The question is, which framework are you choosing? Is it one that you have created yourself, or your company has created themselves, or is it one you share with other people and collaborate with to make better? The second is, I think, a framework is desirable. So it is, I think, true that we are magicians. We make things happen. And frameworks exist to make that effortless. I don't know if you have ever thought of when you were most productive. It probably wasn't when you were trying to configure Node or when you were setting up your build environment. It was probably when you were able to go from idea to implementation as quickly as possible, as smoothly and effortlessly as you could. Let me give an example. So Nuxt fonts is something that we've built in the Nuxt ecosystem to solve a number of problems with third-party font implementations, where you're using something like Google Fonts. And there are some issues here. There are pre-connects, there are third-party origins, there are font waterfalls, and there's layout shift, my own personal pet peeve on the web. And we're able to, at a framework level, make that layout shift mostly go away, for example. And we do that by taking the user's font family choice, spotting the font family using a library we created and extracted for anyone to use called Unifont, to download and inject the fonts from any provider, whether that's FontSource, Google, Bunny, or others. Use Fontaine, another open source library we created, which adds fallbacks. By the way, the algorithm there is from Katie Hempenius at Google. She came up with this idea to come up with fallbacks so that you don't have that layout shift. And then we are able to inject it into your app. And that's, I think, a good example of why a framework is a desirable thing, because it's able to take some of that pain and friction and take it away. It means that you're able to benefit from the best practices other people bring to the table. And that means that you don't have to be an expert. Even, for example, as a framework maintainer, I don't have to be an expert in everything because it's not something I'm doing on my own. It's something we as a community are doing when we build Nuxt, for example, but the same goes for any framework. I am curious, by the way, whether you're using Nuxt. I don't know if these QR codes are working. They are not working. Say the emojis. Let me test. No, they're not working. I'm sorry about that. Well, we will never know. It will be a mystery. But if there is anyone here who's not using Nuxt, then we've actually taken Nuxt fonts and we have created it, we have extracted it into a library called Fontless. It was originally an idea from the Quick team, but one that we very much wanted to do. And I particularly want to say that Hiroshi, who's been creating so many amazing PRs recently, and I think is here at this conference. Hiroshi, wherever you are, thank you so much. It basically extracts Nuxt fonts into something that can be used by anyone with a Vite-based framework, whether that's React, Solid, Svelte, Quick, or Vue without Nuxt. But my point remains. Frameworks are desirable. Building best practices into something that is shareable with other people so you can benefit and collaborate with them is always going to be a better approach than rolling your own. Someone said that if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And I think that is very true when it comes to building for the future. And is one of the things that makes me think that using a framework, whatever it is going to be a better choice when building for the next decade. And thirdly, I think it's important to remember that a framework is sometimes the right tool. It's not always the right tool, but it is sometimes, because it is tempting to think that we build an individual item of furniture. We want it to last forever. And it can be frustrating when dependencies update and there are changes and we have to migrate and we have to tend our project. But I think often we forget that we're not building something like a chair. We are crafting something like a house. Houses need constant love and attention and tending. They need to be looked after because unfortunately, otherwise the paint peels off and the wallpaper begins to fade. Maybe the floorboards begin to creak. Whatever it is, it needs love and care. And actually, that is often what we are building when we're building for the web. We're building apps that are alive, that are not static. And so frameworks are able to adapt and keep going with the changing world around us. There are things that they can do. They can unlock resumability and partial hydration, can implement multi-app support and app federation for you. These are some of the features we're working on in Nuxt at the moment. And they're increasingly able to do those features because we are unlocking a generation of more powerful and faster bundlers, things like RSPack or Rolldown or Farm. And we're particularly excited by Rolldown in the Nuxt and Vite worlds at the moment. And Nuxt actually, I'm not sure if you know, but we've actually built it so that Nuxt isn't dependent on any one bundler. Vite is our default, but it's also possible to build with Webpack or RSPack or even create your own, whether that's inline in Nuxt config or you can create a reusable package. And if you're doing that, it's as simple as creating a bundler that takes in a server and exports and a folder of client assets that need to be served to the browser. In fact, most of how we build things in Nuxt isn't specific to Vite or Webpack. We use something called a build plugin API, which is based on unplugin. And the idea is that any plugin which supports keys, which it has things like Webpack, Farm, Parcel, ESBuild, and more, is actually able to be added to any plugin, any bundler that we have or which you choose to use in your Nuxt app. There are some more exciting things that we're working on, like streaming HTML or integrating a payload cache of the browser. And we have some pre-rendering optimization. So I don't have time to go into these in too much detail, but one thing that we're working on experimentally is taking multiple chunks and combining them into a single chunk when you render your initial application, and using an import map to re-export those original chunks from that single chunk. It leads to hugely faster initial load times when you have lots of chunks, and it doesn't mess with your caching or subsequent module loads because the import map manages to make it work. We are also working on another thing. This is taking async data handlers and splitting them into virtual chunks so they aren't included in your JavaScript. This is particularly relevant for Nuxt when you're building a static website, because that async data function, that handler, doesn't get rerun if it's statically extracted at build time. So we really don't need the code at all at runtime. It doesn't make any difference in this particular case, which is just a fetch call. There's no savings. But if you're doing something more complicated there, like using Nuxt content, this can save a lot of JavaScript. We tested it on Nuxt.com with an earlier version of Nuxt content, and it reduced the total JavaScript required by 39% and reduced unused JavaScript by 66%. And I think really when you have frameworks that are exploring some of the optimizations that are possible, you can benefit from these without needing to work on it yourself. It's a free optimization, as it were. I think we'll also see increasingly frameworks leaning into tighter vertical integrations. That's what we'll see from deployment providers. So you see it already in providers like Vercel or Cloudflare or Netlify, offering features like blob stores or KV stores, offering durable objects on Cloudflare is a particularly wonderful primitive, or containers, or image optimization, lots and lots of different kind of things that can be all under one roof. And those kinds of platform primitives lead frameworks to make one of two choices. So you can either lean into the platform and create something which is just centered around a single platform, or you can lean into a framework and create something which is designed to be portable across platforms. And I think a good example of the two different choices, at least in the past, I know Next.js are seeking to change this, for example, but Next.js has been a good example of a platform-centric approach. So having an amazing DX and leaning into and benefiting from all the things that Vercel have to offer, whilst still allowing self-hosting elsewhere. Or Nuxt, which is leaning into a provider pattern, where you can effectively choose almost every different option in your app, whether that's KV database, image, testing, fonts, even the routing you use, and of course, the deployment provider. We have over 90 plus providers. And while that may seem better, and obviously it's something I personally deeply believe in, it is also costly because it requires a community of people who use and contribute to make something like this work. We have to have people using all of these providers in order to keep them up to date, and that is a costly thing. Although I do think that the leaning into this openness, it's one of the, if not the, fundamental value of the web. And it is something that we really very deeply believe in. Anyway, that provider pattern that we're adopting in Nuxt is also to be found in Nitro, SvelteKit, Astro, totally different frameworks. I mean, Nitro is used by Nuxt, but. And I think that means, all of that means that we are able to create frameworks that do incredible things. So bet on a framework. But third, and this is my final point, build with others. If you want to build something that lasts, build with others. As I said before, if you want to go far, go together. And so we've sought to embrace an attitude of friendly collaboration in Nuxt. So actually it's the point, right? I don't know about you, but the reason I love open source and the reason why I got involved in the first place was because there is nothing better than collaborating with other people, meeting people online, building something cool, and showing it off. Look at this shiny thing. Isn't it amazing? And if you're just doing that by yourself, it is not reward. Doesn't have the same kind of reward. It doesn't have the same kind of joy. The reason I love conferences like this, because I get to meet and see people whose avatars I recognize from GitHub, but I have never met in person. And that is the joy of it, right? So collaboration, whether that is with people, if you can imagine, from the Svelte community even. I say that because anyway. Or React or Astro or whatever it might be, friendly collaboration is the way to build something that will last for the long time, as well as to have much more fun in the meantime. I also think it's important to be center-bounded. So I've heard, I don't know exactly how true this is, but I have heard that in Australia, there are no fences. Ranchers don't bother putting up fences for their cattle because they don't need to. The cows don't wander off into the desert because they know where they're getting food and water. They're not kept in by fences and boundaries that set in who is in and who is out. They're part of a community because they're drawn to something in it. Moving beyond the cows at this point. I hope you see that this is also about what frameworks and open source communities can be about. We can be about something that we believe in, a vision that draws us together rather than something that keeps people out. It's not about whether you use Vue or Svelte or React or Solid or whatever, but whether you're about the same kind of thing, whether you want to contribute and help out and be part of a team. It's one of the things I'm most delighted by is that Nuxt is a community. So we have over 950 contributors, and a lot of those people there are here today. I hope you can see your picture. If you don't, blame GitHub. This is a live picture. But it is something that matters a lot. Nuxt isn't something that's built by one person or even a team of 8 or a team of 25, but a team of 950 and counting. And the same is true for our modules, which go far beyond the people who've contributed to Nuxt core and add so many more features. So build with others. We're looking to create a new user portal, by the way, on nuxt.com. We've been planning it for a while, so if I've said this before, I really do mean it. And I'd love for some help when we get to that point. You'll be able to track your sites deployed and all kinds of cool stuff. And I, by the way, have an open diary, so if anyone wants to chat with me for 10 minutes, it's not very long, I know, but feel free to book a slot. I would love to say hi. And if you want to get involved in open source, either Nuxt or something else, or if there's any other way I can help, I would love to do it. I also wanted to give you some spoilers that are not strictly related to the topic at hand. So at the moment, if you create a new Nuxt app, it starts two environments, a Vite client and a Vite server environment. Those are actually two separate dev servers. And we're planning to do something a little bit different. So we're moving to the Vite environment API in Nuxt, which allows you to have a single dev server and multiple environments. And it really is a much more performant and better way to go. This is something that Nitro is also going to opt into. So instead of having 3 dev servers, a Vite client, Vite server, and a Nitro, we will end up with just 1 dev server in Nuxt 5. But if this is our current workflow, when we adopt the environment API, it's going to look a little bit like this, where we just have a very simple workflow. Everything is configured through Vite, including its hooks. And we're going to actually bring that, even though it's a change that we had slated for Nuxt 5, we're going to bring that to Vite, to Nuxt 4.2, and allow opting into the Vite environment API. The Nitro server is becoming abstracted. We're allowing experimental adoption of extractable async data, the same feature I just demoed earlier, which resulted in 39% JavaScript in the testing. We're pre-compiling the bundle renderer, which makes, in our testing there, 15% faster, 15 times faster rendering of HTML. Just a very micro benchmark, not the total time. We have a new dev time error page, and we have some very cool new TypeScript plugins from KazariX. And I'm going to do that now. I am aware I have 30 seconds left, so I'm going to have to be super fast. But I'm going to merge, if GitHub is going to be with me, Nuxt 4.2, and a GitHub action will release this to a form where you can try it out.